Hello my dears, and welcome back to my corner of the internet. I'm Shannon, and tonight I've got another paranormal video to share with you guys. Last week I talked about Jean Harlow's haunted Los Angeles mansion, and a lot of you guys really enjoyed that video. From the comments I could tell that you liked that kind of look into old Hollywood, you know, sort of the golden age of Hollywood as it's called. And so I thought I would look a little further into that, and I found all kinds of crazy stories. But the one that I want to touch on tonight actually involves a hotel. You guys know I love haunted houses and haunted hotels. So when I saw this article about the Knickerbocker Hotel in Hollywood, I had to look further into it because it just sounded too interesting. The main thing that really drew me in about this hotel was that it seems that every big name in Hollywood at the time of this hotel's heyday passed through the hallways, through the doors of this hotel. So the Knickerbocker Hotel was built in the mid-1920s, and it actually started out as an apartment building, interestingly enough. And it was soon after that, once things really started to get going in Hollywood with the movie industry, that eventually it was turned into a hotel. And like I said, it was just, if anyone who was anyone was at this hotel. Now, the main thing for the locals was the bar. And it was said that, you know, during the 20s, 30s, 40s, especially those 3 decades was when it was really at the top of its game. The lineup at lunchtime to get into the bar to have lunch and have a drink would go around the block. There were just so many people just dying to get in there. And, you know, I'm sure as soon as word got out that big Hollywood celebrities, and I mean big, I'm talking like Elvis Presley, Marilyn Monroe, directors, producers were at this restaurant, then, you know, everyone just wanted to go. And like I briefly mentioned before, the name Marilyn Monroe, she was said to have spent a lot of time there. It was said that she would meet with Joe DiMaggio before they were married. They would meet up there, you know, sort of illicitly to have drinks or to have lunch. And then eventually, once they finally did get married in the 1950s, in the hotel is where they spent their honeymoon. So I thought that was very interesting. And we'll get more into that when we get into sort of the ghost stories of this hotel. But again, Elvis Presley, there are tons of photos. I'll insert some here, if I can find them, of him staying at the hotel. And it was said that he stayed in room 1016. And there were photos of him entering the hotel. There are photos of him in his hotel room. I guess because it was Elvis and because of the popularity of the hotel, his stays there were very documented. Laurel and Hardy, the comedy duo from way back in the day, were said to have stayed there as well in room 205. And there's just so many different stories of celebrities that have stayed there. And can you imagine, I know I mentioned this in the last video as well, as sort of like, imagine what these walls have seen. But can you imagine what a hotel that saw all those celebrities come in and out, you know, conducting affairs, conducting business, all the things that hotel has seen. I'm sure it's rather wild. And then eventually, once the hotel sort of reached its decline in the 60s, there was, I read about how Graham Nash lived there in 1968. And also, another thing towards the end of its heyday, for 10 years, Harry Houdini's widow held a seance on the roof of the hotel. I guess before he had died, Harry Houdini himself had gotten really into learning about the paranormal and life after death, and he became so interested in finding out whether it was true or not. So he told his wife that when he passed over to the other side, if there was any possible way for him to communicate with her, he would do it. And so once a year on his birthday, which was Halloween, she would hold a seance on the roof of this hotel, and there were all different kinds of stories about things that would happen during these seances. And during one of them, it was said that it rained only over the Knickerbocker Hotel. Nowhere else in Los Angeles was it raining except over this hotel. So who knows if that's true or not, but that's such an interesting story. And I think it was the final year that she held the seance on the roof. It was actually filmed and televised, and it was a whole thing that became this ritual. And so yeah, I think that's very interesting. I think that's beautiful that, you know, for 10 years she dedicated one day a year to going and trying to contact him. There's something a little romantic about it, if we're being honest. At least to me there is. Then of course, like any hotel or any house or any hospital that's been around for many, many years, there were deaths that took place there. There were, I'm sure, many just, you know, civilian, everyday person deaths that took place, but there were also some more well-documented deaths as well. In 1962, a very well-known costume designer by the name of Irene Lentz, she checked into a room on the 11th floor. I guess the man that she had been having an affair with, who I can't remember his name right now, but he was like a director or producer or something, very well known. She referred to him as the love of her life. Like, she maintained that, held on to that. And he passed away eventually, you know. And so after he did, it was said she was so distraught that she went to the hotel, checked into a room on the 11th floor, and that night she was drinking in her room, and eventually, after some other failed attempts, she jumped out of the window. Now, above the main doors, there's like an awning, kind of like an overhang awning type situation, and she fell. So she jumped out of her window and she fell onto that overhang. And I don't know if it was nighttime or what, but nobody saw it happen, and so she actually remained there for, I think it was 4 or 5 days, until somebody finally saw her. And that's so sad and tragic. Also in 1966, an actor by the name of William Frawley, I think he was from The Love Boat, he was walking down the street past the hotel, and he had a heart attack on the street. And now it was either a staff member of the hotel or somebody staying at the hotel. They were a nurse, and they saw him, and they dragged him into the hotel, presumably to try to resuscitate him or to call an ambulance and him have somewhere safe to wait. But he died in the lobby. And there was another man, I believe he was a film director. He also died in that lobby. So there was a lot of death there in the hotel, for sure. And there's just been many, many, many stories of many different ghostly sightings within the hotel, whether that be apparitions or sounds or what have you. To the point that, so today, as it stands today, the Knickerbocker is actually a retirement home. And there was a video I watched on YouTube. I believe the channel is called Days with Jordan the Lion. I loved his video. It was very informative. And he said that from what he could gather, because he actually went to the hotel and like spoke to a security guard, and then went back and filmed around the area and inside. And he said it seemed like it was sort of a retirement home filled with a lot of elderly Russian people. I guess maybe the neighborhood was populated with a lot of Russian people, and they were just in the retirement home. But there have been so many stories over the years of these apparitions that people see. And one of the most interesting that I read about was the ghost of Marilyn Monroe. Now, there are a few locations around Hollywood that claim where people claim to have seen the ghost of Marilyn Monroe, two in particular that I know of, the Knickerbocker being one of them. And apparently what happens is there have been multiple people on different occasions come running out of the bathroom just hysterical because they've seen her ghost or her apparition in the bathroom. And can you imagine, you're just in the bathroom and then you see an apparition of the ghost of Marilyn Monroe, even if it wasn't, because I'm sure Marilyn Monroe's not, you know, Marilyn Monroe's ghost isn't in this bathroom tormenting people, but just the very idea of seeing an apparition, especially one that you recognize, that'd be so scary. I don't even know what I'd do. I would definitely get out of there. Anyway, you guys, that's about it for the Knickerbocker Hotel. I hope you enjoyed this. Over the next few weeks, we're going to keep touching on some old Hollywood ghost stories. I've even got one that isn't quite old Hollywood, but it's definitely Hollywood related, but also Canada related, because it's about a house that Dan Aykroyd lived in. Dan Aykroyd, of course, a Canadian treasure. And apparently living in this haunted house that he did, which was in Los Angeles, gave him some inspiration for Ghostbusters. So we'll talk more about that in the coming weeks. But thank you guys so much for watching. I hope you're having a good week. I hope everything is okay with you in your towns, in your cities, in your families, in your homes. And that you're all doing well. And I will see you on Friday with another book talk video. Bye guys.